Welcome to today's devotional message from Trusting God Always. You prayed, you fasted, you waited, and still silence. Maybe this message is the sign you didn't know you needed. You sit by the window, the glass cool against your forehead, watching the world move on without you. Another day melts into evening, and the thing you've been praying for, waiting for, aching for, still hasn't arrived. The silence where God's answer should be feels heavy, thick with unspoken questions. You've poured out your heart, laid bare your deepest needs, shouted prayers into the void, and whispered them in the quiet dark. But the phone remains silent, the door stays shut, the situation persists, unchanged. A hollow ache settles in your chest, a familiar companion named doubt. It whispers insidious questions, cold and sharp against the stillness. Does God hear? Does He care? Has He forgotten? Maybe He's just not going to come through this time. This waiting isn't just inconvenient. It feels like a spiritual test you're failing, or worse, a sign you weren't worth the answer. The silence, you think, is His reply, and it feels like a no. But sometimes, the deepest conversations happen in the quiet before the breakthrough. The wilderness often precedes the promised land, not because you're lost, but because the journey through teaches you dependence you could never learn standing still. Perhaps you find yourself in a season where the promise feels further away than ever. The breakthrough you envisioned hasn't happened. The healing hasn't manifested. The relationship hasn't mended. The financial strain hasn't eased. The loneliness hasn't lifted. You've done all the right things, prayed, read your Bible, gone to church, served, yet here you are, still in the waiting room, the ticket in your hand, feeling increasingly flimsy. It's easy to feel lost, overlooked, or even punished when God's timing doesn't align with yours. You look at others whose prayers seem answered instantly, whose paths seem smoother, and the contrast sharpens the pain of your own delay. Their sunshine seems to highlight your lingering shadow. But hear this. Deep within the ache that sits heavy in your chest, like stones piled high, God has not forgotten you. The silence is not His absence. Sometimes the silence is His presence, holding you in the pause. The delay is not His denial. It is often part of the divine unfolding you cannot yet perceive, like the roots growing strong and unseen before the flower ever blooms. The very desert you walk through is being prepared for springs of water you never expected. This message is for the heart that is weary of waiting, for the soul that feels overlooked, for the spirit longing for a flicker of hope in the long night. It's a journey into understanding God's timing, finding peace in the pause, and trusting Him, even when the dawn feels impossibly far away. Trusting God always means finding His hand even when you can't see the path. If these words meet you right where you are, like, share, and subscribe. It helps us reach more souls who need God's comfort. Comment below with your favorite Bible promise, or the one you're still holding on to in the waiting. Let's begin, and let His word breathe new life into yours. She kneels again, not because her prayer changed, but because hope refused to die, a tiny ember flickering in the vast darkness of the unanswered. The floor is cold beneath her knees, a physical echo of the spiritual chill that creeps in when God feels distant. She repeats the familiar words, worn smooth with repetition, holding them up like fragile offerings in the quiet room. Please, just please. The air feels thin, devoid of any responsive presence. Only the hum of the refrigerator, and the distant sound of traffic mocking the stillness she craves. This is the wilderness of waiting, the quiet, featureless landscape where faith feels less like a shield and more like a thin veil against the biting winds of doubt. It is a place of stripping away, where comfort is scarce and patience is refined not by choice, but by necessity. The external world continues its relentless spin, but her inner world is held captive, a prisoner of the unresolved. Every notification on her phone brings a tiny surge of hope, instantly crushed by the mundane reality it reveals. Every knock on the door raises expectations, only to deliver disappointment. She has poured out tears like rain, soaking the ground around her, hoping for a harvest of answered prayer. But the earth remains dry and cracked. It feels like she is tending a garden in a drought, diligently watering, pulling weeds, tending the soil, yet seeing no green shoots emerge. The temptation is to give up, to accept the barrenness as her permanent reality, to believe the lie that God is somewhere else, busy with bigger things, or perhaps simply uninterested in the small, aching details of her life. But the truth is, God is closest in the quiet, in the vulnerable space where her strength runs out and His presence becomes her only refuge. It is here, in the silence before dawn, that He often does His deepest work, not on the situation she prays for, but on the heart that prays. He is not asking for a performance of strength, but a posture of surrender, a willingness to trust the potter's hand, even when the clay feels formless and messy. He promises that those who wait on the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint. This promise isn't about the answer appearing faster. It's about the internal transformation that happens while you wait. It is the quiet miracle of strength being infused into weariness, hope into despair, peace into anxiety, like the oil lamp that needs constant tending in the darkness. Her faith requires intentional refueling, drawing from the hidden reserves of grace God provides in the waiting. She is learning that trusting God always isn't about understanding His plan, but understanding His character. He is faithful, He is good, and He is always working, even when His work is hidden from sight, like a seed underground, preparing for its moment in the sun. This season of silence is not empty. It is full of His unseen presence, His quiet shaping, His relentless love. It is a holy pause, designed to deepen her roots before the winds of blessing come. It feels like darkness surrounds you. The weight of the world, the pressure of unanswered prayers presses down. You sit in the silence, wondering if your prayer was even heard. The wind taps the window, like God's whisper, waiting for your stillness. You might feel forgotten, buried beneath layers of circumstance, unable to see the light, to feel the warmth of breakthrough directly. All you know is the dark, the pressure, the waiting that stretches into days, weeks, perhaps years. You desperately long to see the sprout, the immediate fruit of your faith, the visible proof that something is happening. But beneath that soil, a miracle is stirring. Invisible work is underway. Just as a tiny seed dropped into the earth doesn't see the sun initially, it feels the necessary pressure, the rich darkness, the essential moisture that fuels a hidden transformation. Roots are pushing down, finding stability in the unseen depth. A shoot is gathering strength, preparing to push upward, its timing dictated not by your impatience, but by the divine programming God placed within it, responding to the perfect conditions He provides, even in the dark. This subterranean process is profoundly spiritual. God is often doing His deepest work not in the immediate, visible outcome you crave, but beneath the surface of your soul, in the fertile soil of your waiting. He is developing roots, resilience you didn't know you possessed, a deeper, unshakable trust rooted in His character, a dependence on Him alone because everything else feels uncertain. He is preparing the shoot, shaping your character through quiet endurance, clarifying your purpose in the stillness, aligning your heart with His in ways that only happen when stripped of distractions. The waiting isn't empty time. It is sacred, purposeful preparation time. It feels like a burial, but it's truly the ground for resurrection. It feels like being overlooked, but it's precisely where God's undivided attention is focused on your inner growth. Remember the quiet power of Psalm 27:14. Wait for the Lord, be strong, and take heart, and wait for the Lord. The waiting is not just something you endure before receiving strength and courage. The waiting builds that strength and courage. It is the crucible where resilience is forged, where hope becomes less about what you see and more about who you trust. This period beneath the soil is cultivating the very qualities needed for the harvest God intends. It is a season of hidden strength, a time when surrender is the most powerful action you can take. He is not asking for strength, just surrender to His unseen hand. Reflect on the pressure you feel, not as a sign of being crushed, but perhaps as the divine weight pressing you into the very foundation of His faithfulness. He is working, even when you cannot see His hand, preparing you for a bloom you cannot yet imagine. The sun dips low over the desert plains, painting the sky in hues of weary gold and deepening purple. Sarah looks at Abraham, and he at her. It's not just another day, it's another year. Another year since the voice called. Another year since the promise was whispered like wind across the sand. Descendants as numerous as the stars. A land they couldn't even see on the horizon. They believed. Oh, they believed. He left everything, stepped out in blind faith, and that belief was counted as righteousness in the eyes of the divine. Genesis 15, verse 6, whispers this profound truth. But the years marched on, relentless and unyielding. Sarah's youth faded like a desert bloom under the harsh sun. The promise that once felt like a living seed now felt like a stone in the heart, heavy and cold. They tried to help God, didn't they? A human solution to a divine promise. Hagar's story, a complex, painful reminder of how our impatience can muddy the waters of God's perfect plan. You know this feeling, don't you? That knot in your stomach, when the timeline you envisioned for your life, your career, your family, stretches into an unknown distance, and the practical answers start to look tempting, even necessary. You ask yourself, does God need my help? Is He even capable of doing this on His own schedule? But God waited. He watched as they stumbled, loved them through their doubt and their messy attempts to control the narrative. He wasn't being distant or uncruel. He was waiting for the perfect moment, the one where the miracle would be so utterly impossible by human standards, so undeniably supernatural, that there would be no doubt who had done it. He was setting the stage for His glory. His delay wasn't a denial of the promise. It was the preparation for a demonstration of power that would echo through history. The answer wasn't just a son. It was Isaac, the child of impossible promise. A living testament to God's sovereign timing. This is the quiet truth that settles in the heart weary from waiting. God's promises unfold on His clock, not ours. And often, His clock seems incredibly slow from our perspective. But perhaps the very duration of your waiting is not a sign of His indifference, but the careful crafting of a moment where His intervention will be unmistakable. Where the miracle, when it comes, will leave no room for human pride. Only awe and gratitude for the one who makes the impossible possible. Can you look at the long years, the silent stretches, the seemingly impossible circumstances surrounding your deepest longing, and begin to trust that God's delay is not denial, but the intricate setup for a greater demonstration of His power in your life? Can you breathe out the weary sigh and breathe in the quiet confidence that He is not just capable of keeping His promise, but orchestrating its fulfillment in a way that will point undeniably back to Him? He is the master conductor, timing every note, every silence, every crescendo for a divine purpose. Trust the timing, for it is woven into the very fabric of His faithfulness. The days blur into a monotonous rhythm. You stare at the same four walls, the same quiet street outside your window, the same list of unanswered emails or unspoken prayers. The waiting feels heavy, a thick fog that muffles the vibrant life you imagined having by now. It wasn't supposed to be like this. You had plans, big plans, and here you are, tending a flock of mundane tasks, living a life that feels small. Picture Him, not as the mighty deliverer, but as the prince, reared in the grandeur of Pharaoh's court, educated, privileged, potentially groomed for power. He saw the suffering of His people, the weight of their chains, and perhaps, fueled by righteous anger and a deep-seated desire to fix what was broken, He took matters into His own hands. A moment of swift, self-reliant action led to a life-altering consequence: murder, flight, exile. The palace gates slammed shut behind Him, not with ceremony, but with desperation. He went from royalty to fugitive in a single desperate act. And then came the wilderness. 40 years. Imagine that span of time, longer than many lifetimes today. 40 years of tending sheep in the desolate expanse of Midian. 40 years of sun-baked plains, star-dusted nights, the bleating of livestock, and the vast, humbling silence of the desert. A far, far cry from the silks and stones of Egypt, from the councils of power and the clamor of a bustling court. God didn't immediately appear in a burning bush. He wasn't leading marches through the sand. For 40 years, He was simply present, in the quiet, in the solitude, teaching Moses the rhythms of the desert. Yes, but more profoundly, teaching him the rhythm of His presence, found not in palaces or positions of power, but in the stillness, in the unknown. This wilderness wasn't wasted time. It was essential training. It was in the stripping away that the building began. God was patiently, persistently, divinely dismantling the Egyptian identity Moses had absorbed, the self-reliance, the pride, the tendency to take matters into his own strength. He was forging a humble shepherd into the man who would stand before the world's most powerful ruler and declare God's decree, who would lead millions through impossible obstacles. He learned dependence not in the halls of power, but in the vulnerability of the open desert. He learned to trust the shepherd of his own soul by becoming a shepherd himself. He learned that true strength isn't about where you've been, but who is with you where you are. The greatest preparation often happens in the most obscure places. Perhaps your wilderness looks different. It might be a season of professional plateau, a period of relational strain, a waiting time for healing, or simply a prolonged sense of uncertainty about what's next. You feel overlooked, unproductive, like your potential is withering on the vine. The fear creeps in. Fear that this is it, that your best days are behind you, that you missed your chance. But what if this quiet season isn't a detour, but the designated path? What if the seemingly endless wait isn't a punishment, but a pruning? What if, in the stillness you didn't choose, God is doing His most profound work in you, preparing you for the work through you? This season might feel like a setback, but God is setting you up. He's teaching you to rely on His provision when your own resources run dry. He's cultivating patience in a world that demands instant gratification. He's deepening your roots in Him during a time when outward growth isn't visible. It feels slow because the work is internal, foundational. Moses needed 40 years of tending sheep to unlearn 4 decades of Egyptian self-sufficiency and pride. He needed to learn the terrain, the harsh realities, the utter dependence on external factors like rain and pasturage, echoes of the dependence he would later teach a nation navigating their own desert. If you feel lost in a wilderness of waiting, take heart. Trust that God is using this time. He's shaping you, molding you, equipping you in ways you wouldn't allow in the busyness or prominence you might crave. He is stripping away the need to prove yourself and replacing it with the quiet confidence of knowing whose you are. The promised land moment is coming, but the journey through the wilderness is what prepares you to steward it well. He is teaching you dependence on Him, just as He taught Moses. This isn't wasted time. It's sacred formation. Trust the process. Trust the teacher. The waiting stretches thin, like a wire pulled taut between the present struggle and a future you can't yet grasp. Inside, a storm gathers. It's not the kind the weather report forecasts, but one that swirls behind your eyes, within the quiet chambers of your soul. Anxiety whispers corrosive questions about what might happen, painting worst-case scenarios onto the canvas of your uncertainty. Impatience taps a frantic rhythm against your ribs, demanding that the season of waiting must end, and it must end now. Doubt, the oldest tempter, throws long, wavering shadows over the promises you thought were sure, making you question if you ever heard God right in the first place. The heart races, a wild bird trapped in a cage. Sleep becomes a distant memory, replaced by the constant hum of your own troubled thoughts, replaying every conversation, every decision, every fear. You feel tossed and buffeted by these inner waves, exhausted by the sheer force of the turmoil. A weary question forms on your lips. Am I doing something wrong? Is my faith too weak? This internal tempest, this churning sea of emotion and thought, is a deeply human experience of waiting. It's a natural, though painful, reaction to feeling uncertain and profoundly out of control. The wind howls within, and you feel utterly alone, trying to bail water from a rapidly filling boat with only your cupped hands. But it is precisely here, in the heart of this inner storm, that Jesus stands. He doesn't promise that the waves will instantly cease or that the wind will fall silent the moment you call His name. Instead, He offers something more profound, more enduring, His peace in the storm. Not the absence of the struggle, but a profound, inexplicable calm in the midst of it. The ancient words of Philippians 4:6-7 speak directly into this tempest. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. This is the gentle, transformative truth. Peace in waiting isn't the result of finally having the answer you've longed for. It is the result of anchoring your storm-tossed heart in the answerer himself. His presence is the harbor no storm can breach. His peace is the quiet certainty that guards your fragile heart and your weary mind, even when the world outside or the storm inside rages. It's a peace that makes no logical sense to the anxious mind, a quiet strength available not after the trial, but during it. It doesn't erase the questions, but it provides a foundation sturdy enough to hold them. Instead of battling the storm alone, using all your strength to fight the waves of anxiety and doubt, can you instead invite God's peace to guard your heart and mind right now, in this very moment, in the midst of the uncertainty? The peace is available. It waits for you, not on the distant shore, but here, in the waiting room, where His presence is the only true calm. You watch the world move on. Friends land the job, get the house, celebrate the milestone. And you? You feel a profound stillness, an echoing quiet where you expected movement, progress, blossoming. You've prayed, you've worked, you've waited with what felt like faith, only to find yourself standing in the same place, the same season. It feels like the ground beneath you hasn't shifted an inch, like you're stuck, forgotten. But what if this feeling of being stuck is an illusion? What if the most vital work isn't happening above ground where you can see it, but deep beneath the surface? Think of the mighty oak. You admire its height, its leafy canopy providing shade, its sheer visible resilience against the wind. But the true secret to its strength, its ability to weather the harshest storms and draw life from hidden reserves, lies in the unseen world of its roots. Those roots don't grow overnight. They push deeper, wider, anchoring the tree firmly into the earth, often during seasons that look dormant from the outside. The tree isn't stuck, it's rooting. This quiet, waiting place in your life, it's the earth God is inviting your faith to dig into. Jeremiah 17, verses 7-8, paints a picture of the one who trusts in the Lord, who is like a tree planted by the water, sending out its roots by the stream. This tree doesn't fear the heat. Its leaves stay green. It has no worries in drought and never fails to bear fruit. The promise isn't that the heat or drought won't come, but that its roots are so deeply connected to the life source that it remains vibrant through it all. Your waiting isn't a sign of stagnation. It's the sacred season God is using to deepen your reliance on Him, to connect your soul's roots more firmly to the living water that is His presence, His promises. He isn't just observing your patience. He is actively building resilience within you, stabilizing your spirit in ways you cannot see. The strength forged in the unseen moments of trusting when nothing changes is the strength that will hold you firm when the winds of life inevitably blow. The depth of your roots determines the height of your resilience, the enduring green of your hope. You are not stuck. You are being rooted. Trust the unseen work. Trust the gardener who knows exactly what you need to withstand and to flourish. Your season of waiting is not a pause in your story, but the chapter where your foundation is being made unshakable. Let your soul dig deep into the truth of His faithfulness, even when the surface feels unchanging. You watch the world rush past your window, a blur of motion you feel utterly disconnected from. Hours melt into days, days into weeks, and you are still here in this same spot, waiting. Waiting for clarity, for provision, for healing, for a door to open. The silence feels heavy, thick with the unspoken question, is this waiting? Is this what faith looks like? Sometimes, the long pause God calls us to feels less like hopeful anticipation and more like passive despair, a resigned sigh echoing in an empty room. It can feel like giving up, like the waves of circumstance are simply too big to fight, and all you can do is let them wash over you, feeling powerless, adrift. But what if this quiet stillness is misunderstood? What if biblical waiting is not a retreat from life, but a way of living through it, anchored differently? It's not a passive surrender to circumstance, a letting go of effort, but an active surrender to God, a dynamic giving over of control while keeping your hand to the plow. It's not sitting idly by, watching the world, but standing firm on the bedrock of His promises, rooted in Him, while living faithfully in the present moment, tending the garden He's given you today, even if the harvest seems distant. Think of the eagle in Isaiah 40:31. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. This isn't a picture of idleness. It's soaring through storms, running the long race, walking the steady path, all verbs of action. The strength isn't granted after the wait is over. It is renewed while they are hoping, waiting. The waiting itself becomes the place of empowerment, a spiritual wellspring. It is through the dynamic reliance on Him during the wait that you find the strength to keep moving, to keep living, to keep trusting. You are not stagnant. You are anchored. And from that anchor point, true movement, true soaring becomes possible. It is a beautiful paradox. You find power in your surrender and gain speed by waiting on the one who is never late. So feel the dust settle in the waiting, but let it be the dust of fertile ground, not stagnant decay. Let the stillness be the quiet before the wind beneath your wings lifts you. How can you shift, even today, from feeling swallowed by passive despair to standing tall in active, hope-filled trusting? What does living faithfully look like for you in this specific moment, in the middle of your waiting season? It's in the small acts of obedience, the quiet prayers whispered, the hand reaching out to a neighbor, the step taken in faith, even when the path ahead is shrouded in mist. The silence presses in. You sit there, much like they did, maybe huddled in the dim light of a small room, the world outside hushed, waited. The sky holds its breath. It feels like the end of a chapter you poured your entire life into. Hope, once a vibrant flame, is now a flicker, perhaps extinguished entirely. You prayed, you pleaded, you believed, yet the answer felt like a stone rolled across a tomb door, final, heavy, impenetrable. Remember the disciples on that Saturday. Just hours before, they had witnessed the impossible, the unthinkable. Their Messiah, the one they had left everything to follow, hung lifeless. Now, 3 agonizing days stretch out, each moment heavy with grief, confusion, and stark, paralyzing fear. Their future was sealed, or so it seemed, in a borrowed grave. From a human perspective, it was over. Their waiting felt like the absolute, undeniable end of everything they had poured their faith into. It was the darkest, most silent wait imaginable. The air thick with unspoken questions and the chilling absence of the one who had been everything. They had no idea what sunrise was coming. But that silent, waiting Saturday was not the end. It was the hinge of history, the quiet, sacred pause before the greatest, most earth-shattering sunrise the world has ever known. What felt like defeat was the divine setup for unprecedented victory. The spiritual insight here runs deeper than tears. Sometimes, the waiting room is darkest, quietest, and most devoid of light just before the breakthrough. What feels like the definitive end might just be the sacred pause, the hushed earth, before God does something infinitely more magnificent than you could have possibly imagined or prayed for. He is working in the silence, preparing the dawn even while you sit in the deepest night. The heaviest stone will roll away. The quietest moment might hold the loudest promise. If you find yourself today in a season of deep darkness, of painful, bewildering waiting, feeling like your hope is in the tomb, this is the call to hope for your soul. Hold on to the truth of that first Easter morning, even when your present feels like the desolate Saturday. God is sovereign, absolutely sovereign, even in the tomb. His power is not diminished by the darkness. Your waiting is not the final scene. Sunday is coming. Trust Him in the silence. You scroll through the polished squares of other people's lives. A beaming vase flashes across the screen, showcasing a brand new engagement ring. The next is a proud parent holding a newborn, radiating joy. Then comes the promotion announcement, the sold sign, the triumphant caption of a long-awaited prayer, finally answered. Each image, a snapshot of breakthrough, of harvest, of dreams seemingly fulfilled. And there, in the quiet space between breaths, a sharp pang. A question forms in the back of your mind, laced with a quiet ache. Why not me? You feel it, don't you? That quiet discontent settling in like dust. You see their season of abundance, of visible fruit, and you look at your own life, feeling stuck in a long, seemingly barren waiting season. Comparison creeps in, a subtle thief stealing your peace. It breeds envy, a silent resentment, and worst of all, it plants seeds of doubt about God's goodness towards you. Does He see you? Does He care about your deepest longings? Is your prayer lost in the noise of others' answered prayers? But look closer at the truth, the one often obscured by the glittering highlight reels. The spiritual insight is profound. Your journey with God is as unique as your fingerprint. Every garden has its own specific planting season, its own delicate growth cycle, its own divinely appointed harvest time. The tomato doesn't ripen at the same moment as the corn. The oak tree doesn't bear acorns in the same year it was planted. Why would your spiritual journey, so intricately woven by the hands of a personal God, follow the exact same timeline or pattern as another's? Galatians 6:4 offers a gentle redirection, a compassionate invitation to turn our gaze inward. Each one should test their own actions. Then they can take pride in themselves alone, without comparing themselves to someone else. This isn't a call to isolation, but a call to sacred self-awareness, recognizing the dignity and divine purpose within your own specific path. Comparing your current season, whether it feels like deep winter, patient spring, or long summer, to someone else's season of harvest is inherently unfair. It's unfair to the unique soil God is cultivating in you. It's unfair to the seeds He has planted in your heart, waiting for His perfect conditions to flourish. It misunderstands the intimate, personal care God has for each of His children. He isn't tending a generic field. He is tending your specific garden with perfect love and perfect timing. Perhaps the greatest act of faith in a waiting season is not striving harder, but releasing the burden of comparison. It is a quiet surrender, trusting that while others' trees may be laden with visible fruit, God is working beneath the surface in your life, strengthening roots, enriching the soil, preparing for a harvest specifically designed for you. Can you release the heavy weight of looking sideways at others' blessings and instead look upward, trusting that the divine gardener is intimately caring for your soul in your specific season with unwavering love? Can you find rest in knowing His timing isn't a delay, but a deliberate, loving appointment just for you? You stand at the edge of the wilderness, the dust settling after the storm you expected never arrived. You prayed for a sign, a boom of thunder, a mountain split in two, anything dramatic enough to confirm God heard you, anything loud enough to drown out the noise of your own fear and the world's doubt. Like Elijah on the mountain, you looked for God in the wind that tore through the rocks, shattering the air with its force. You waited through the trembling earth of the earthquake, shaking the very ground beneath your feet, hoping His power would manifest in undeniable might. Then came the fire, a consuming blaze, bright and fierce, the kind of spectacle that demands attention, screaming presence. Yet, the ancient text whispers back, God was not in the wind, nor the earthquake, nor the fire. 1 Kings 19:11-12. He often isn't in the grand, terrifying displays we anticipate. He is found in the stillness, in the gentle whisper, in the quiet space that opens up when all the frantic searching ceases, when the expectation of the dramatic finally fades. This waiting, this desolate silence where you feel most alone, is not empty. It is fertile ground. It strips away the layers of distraction, the demands of urgency, the clamor of your own thoughts, creating a sacred vacuum where the subtle resonance of divine presence can finally be perceived. You stop looking for the burning bush and begin to notice the dewdrop on a leaf, the single bird singing in the dawn, the unexpected peace that settles over your heart in the midst of turmoil. God's most profound communication often doesn't roar. It breathes. It is a nudge in your spirit during quiet reflection, a verse in Scripture that seems to leap off the page and speak directly to your soul's question. A simple, deep knowing that settles within you like a quiet anchor. We search for Him in the noise of the world and the clamor of our anxieties, missing His voice in the very quiet we often try to escape. The great paradox is that we find the loudest truth in the deepest quiet. Perhaps the waiting isn't a delay. It is the intentional creation of space for your soul to finally quiet enough to hear. Lean into this stillness. Dare to be silent in the face of uncertainty. Listen, not just with your ears straining for a booming voice, but with your spirit attuned to the gentle whisper. He is speaking. You just need to quiet your world enough to hear. You sit with the unanswered prayer. Weeks bleed into months, maybe even years. The timeline you meticulously planned lies in shreds around your feet. Control? It feels like a ghost you can no longer grasp. This isn't just a pause. It's a disruption that scrapes against your nerves, a silence that screams impatience. You feel exposed, vulnerable, wondering if you did something wrong, if God simply isn't listening, or worse, doesn't care about this thing that consumes your heart. The sheer length of the weight begins to wear on you, day after day, the same horizon visible, the same mountain unclimbed, the same door unopened. It's a heavy cloak draped over hope, muting the vibrant colors of faith into dull, weary shades. The world keeps moving, celebrating milestones you yearn for, while you remain in this stagnant pool of waiting, watching, and wrestling. The quiet can be deafening, filling the space where answers should be with the echoing sound of your own unmet longings and rising fears. It feels less like preparation and more like punishment, less like a holy pause and more like divine indifference. And in this uncomfortable stillness, things begin to surface. That tight knot in your stomach isn't just anxiety. It's your deep reliance on your own efforts, exposed when effort yields no immediate result. The sudden panic about finances reveals a hidden idol of security in wealth, now shaken by circumstances beyond your control. The urge to manipulate, to force an outcome, highlights how much you trust your own cleverness over God's timing. The frustration you feel, it burns hottest when your status, your reputation, or your expected future feels uncertain, showing where your identity and trust really lay. Fear, long buried, creeps out of the shadows. Fear of not being enough if this doesn't happen. Fear of being forgotten by God or man. Fear that God isn't working because you can't see Him working in ways you understand. The waiting isn't just an external circumstance you're enduring. It's an internal process, a mirror held up to the soul, reflecting back the dross hidden beneath the surface of everyday life. The idols, the insecurities, the self-reliance, the control issues you didn't even realize were so deeply ingrained. Think of the wilderness. Not a planned detour, but a divinely orchestrated 40-year journey for a nation expecting a quick route to milk and honey. Deuteronomy 8:2-3 unveils the heart of that long march through the barren lands. Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years, to humble and test you in order to know what was in your heart and whether you would keep His commands. He humbled you, causing you to hunger, and then feeding you with manna, which neither you nor your ancestors had known, to teach you that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. The wilderness wasn't the destination, it was the classroom designed by the master teacher. God intentionally allowed hunger, then provided manna, not just to feed their bodies, but to teach them a deeper truth about spiritual dependence. He stripped away their control, disrupted their expectations of comfort and speed, and allowed discomfort and uncertainty to reveal their true nature, their murmuring hearts, their tendency to look back at what was comfortable rather than forward to what God promised. He wanted to know what was in their heart, and the wait in the wilderness was the examination that revealed it. This journey, whether 40 years for a nation or 40 days or more in your personal life, is a refining fire. The heat isn't meant to consume you, but to purify. Impatience, that desperate desire to rush ahead of God's plan, it's fuel for the fire, burning away your need for immediate gratification. Self-reliance, that belief that you can strong-arm your way to the outcome, that success is solely dependent on your grit. It crackles and turns to ash in the face of circumstances you cannot control. The misplaced trust in money, status, comfort, or even your own perceived strength? The fire consumes the dross, leaving behind something purer, something more precious and enduring than any earthly treasure. What remains is a faith that is more resilient, less easily shaken by external storms, centered not on circumstances or personal effort, but solely on the unwavering character and word of God. It's a faith refined, tested, and strengthened in the waiting. A faith that knows true provision comes not just from physical means, but from every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. The wait isn't wasted time. It's sacred space where God does His deepest work within you, building spiritual maturity and resilience. Here is a gentle paradox of the wait. You gain true strength by embracing your weakness before God. You find profound freedom by relinquishing the illusion of control. So look at your waiting season. It might feel like a wilderness, barren and stretching endlessly before you, filled with echoes of unanswered prayers and the whisper of fears. But see it through God's eyes, the refiner's eyes. This is not a sign of His absence or His indifference. It is an invitation to a deeper work, a necessary process for growth. It is the divine opportunity for transformation, a holy crucible designed to forge a faith that can withstand anything. What is this waiting revealing about your heart right now? When the timeline is disrupted, when control is stripped away, what flares up inside you? What is flickering to the surface when your usual comforts or sources of security are removed? Is it fear, doubt, impatience, a reliance on something other than God? What specific areas is God highlighting for surrender? Maybe that idol of needing certainty, that fear of the unknown future, that deep-seated need to control outcomes? What healing does He want to do in the spaces this weight has exposed within your soul? What crucial, resilient growth is He cultivating in the quiet, uncomfortable soil of delay? Don't resist the heat of the fire. It is meant to purify, not destroy. Surrender to the refiner's hands. Allow Him to burn away the dross that hinders your walk. Trust that the waiting isn't just something you endure. It's something God is actively using to make you more like Him, building a resilient faith centered on the rock of His unwavering word, not the shifting sands of your temporary circumstances or the demands of your impatient heart. You sit in the silence, the world moving on outside your window, a quiet ache settling in your chest. It feels like you've been waiting forever. You did the right thing. You tried. You even helped someone along the way, only to be met with more walls, more silence, more waiting. The prayer you prayed feels lost, swallowed by the vastness of time, forgotten in the hustle of life. You wonder if anyone even remembers you're here, in this season, in this struggle, in this quiet corner of the universe. It's a dungeon of the soul, isn't it? A place where hope feels like a fading star and God's promises echo like whispers in an empty room. Consider Joseph, a young man marked by divine favor, gifted with dreams of prominence, yet his path led directly into the deepest, darkest pits. Betrayed by the very brothers who should have protected him, sold into slavery, ripped from everything he knew. Yet even in that desolate place, God was with him. He found favor, worked diligently, only to be falsely accused and thrown into prison, a literal dungeon. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. He interpreted dreams, helping fellow prisoners, one of whom, the cupbearer, was restored to Pharaoh's court. Joseph asked him, "Remember me when it is well with you." But the cupbearer forgotten, left to languish in a physical dungeon which mirrored the spiritual one in his soul. From the depths of that pit, where the light barely touched, God's grand promise felt like a cruel joke. How could a dream of ruling nations bloom in the darkness of a forgotten prison cell? How could a life meant for leadership unfold when you are unseen, unheard, and unremembered by the very people you encountered? The paradox bites. He was most hidden, yet most known by the one who mattered. He was forgotten by man, yet remembered by God. This is the powerful, soul-stirring truth from Joseph's dungeon. God remembers you, even when you feel utterly abandoned by the world, even when you're buried in the deepest pit of waiting. His purposes for you do not depend on human favor or fortunate circumstances. They depend solely on His unfailing plan and His constant, unwavering presence. God was working behind the scenes in that prison cell, not breaking Joseph out, but preparing Joseph within, arranging circumstances, positioning him for the exact moment he would be called to stand before Pharaoh. The deepest valley is often the place where God's most intricate groundwork is laid. If you feel overlooked, stuck in a dungeon of waiting, whether it's for a breakthrough, a healing, a change, a word, hold on to the truth that God sees you. He is profoundly with you. He is working even in the unseen, forgotten places of your life, turning your wilderness into a garden, your pit into a path. Your rememberedness by God is your true hope. You stand at the edge of it again, the long, unmoving wait. The air feels thick with uncertainty, and inside you, a familiar tension tightens its grip. You've been here before, pushing against the invisible wall, trying with all your might to force the situation, to control the outcome, to make the pieces fall exactly where you need them to be, when you need them to be there. It's a relentless battle against circumstances that feel utterly outside your reach. You strategize, you plan, you strive, opening door after door in your mind, trying every angle, every possible leverage. You throw your weight against the immovable object of the present reality, only to find yourself breathless, bruised, and utterly exhausted. The frustration is a bitter taste, the silence a heavy blanket. Nothing happens, or worse, things move in ways you never intended, in directions you desperately wanted to avoid. This striving, this desperate attempt to manage the unmanageable, leaves you depleted, your spirit weary, like an oil lamp running low in the deepest part of the night. But there is a path less traveled in the waiting, a quiet, profound strength found not in your own striving, but in something far more counterintuitive: surrender. It feels like giving up, doesn't it? Like admitting defeat. But surrender in God's kingdom is not the white flag of resignation. It is the banner of deeper faith. It is releasing your white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel of your life and trusting the divine architect of the universe. It's about consciously choosing to surrender your timeline, the one you've meticulously planned out, complete with deadlines and desired outcomes. It's about surrendering your control, acknowledging that despite your best efforts, true power lies not in your grip, but in His. It's surrendering the desired outcome itself, trusting that God's vision for your future, even if it looks drastically different from your own, is infinitely better and more loving. This act is not abandoning hope. It is placing your hope in the only one who can truly fulfill it. It is releasing the heavy burden of trying to manage the universe and placing it, with all its complexities and uncertainties, into the infinitely capable hands of the one who spoke it all into existence, who holds every star in place and knows the number of hairs on your head. Think of the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus, facing the most terrifying moment in human history, the weight of the world pressing down, felt the crushing anxiety. He sweat drops like blood. He pleaded for another way, for the cup to be taken from him. Every fiber of his human being recoiled from the suffering ahead. He could have called down legions of angels, forced a different path, asserted his divine power to avoid the pain. But he didn't. In that crucible of fear and anguish, he modeled the perfect, ultimate surrender. Yet not my will, but yours be done. Luke 22:42. This wasn't a passive acceptance of fate. It was an active alignment of his will with the perfect will of his Father. It was the profound understanding that true strength, true power, true victory would come not through resistance, but through obedience and trust, even unto death. His surrender in that moment unlocked the salvation of the world. The spiritual insight whispers like a gentle breeze through the wilderness of your wait. True strength in waiting comes not from doubling down on your own efforts, but from surrendering your will to God's perfect will and timing. It is in the paradoxical act of letting go that you find the very peace and power you need to stand firm, to endure, to hope. You don't have to conjure up more strength. You just need to surrender. Surrender is not a sign of weakness. It is the ultimate expression of trust in a God who is stronger, wiser, and more loving than you could ever imagine. It's trading your heavy armor of self-reliance for the light yoke of Christ. It is here, in the quiet heart of surrender, that the anxious striving ceases, and a deep well of divine peace begins to rise. Look inward for a moment. What part of this weight are you desperately trying to control? Is it the timeline, the specific outcome, the reactions of others, the feeling of helplessness? Identify the heaviest stone you are trying to carry yourself. Now, imagine lifting it and offering it, not with a heave of defeat, but with the gentle posture of a trusting child. Offer it to God today. Surrender your timeline, release your fears, and lay down your tightly held desires at His feet. Trust His perfect love. Trust His infinite wisdom. Trust that His way, in His timing, is always the right way, leading you through the valley to the mountain peak He has prepared. It is in this surrender that you find the strength you didn't know you had. His strength flowing through you. You sit in the stillness of unanswered prayer. Days blur into weeks, weeks into months, maybe even years. The thing you're waiting for? It feels distant, like a mirage shimmering just beyond your reach. This season of waiting isn't a gentle pause. It's a crucible. It stretches your faith thin, tests the very limits of your patience, and challenges the bedrock of your trust in ways you didn't anticipate. Every silent day feels like resistance against your spirit, a heavy weight pressed down upon your hope. You wonder if you've been forgotten in the vast wilderness of divine timing, if the promised land is just a story others inhabit. This waiting, it's hard. It is profoundly, soul-stirringly hard. But look closer. In this very resistance, a sacred work is happening. Just as a runner pushes against the ground to gain speed, or a weightlifter strains against gravity to build muscle, this spiritual waiting is building something invaluable within you. It's not pointless pain. It is purposeful development. It's cultivating resilience that can withstand future storms, perseverance that refuses to yield, and endurance that finishes the race. The Apostle Paul knew this truth deeply. He tells us in Romans 5:3-5, "We also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit, who has been given to us." He says, glory in the suffering, not because the pain feels good, but because of what the pain produces. The weight is the suffering. The stretching is the perseverance. The refining is the character. And the unwavering certainty in God's goodness, even unseen, is the hope that will not disappoint. The spiritual insight here is profound. The difficulty of the weight isn't arbitrary hardship. It's God's training ground. It's building the inner strength, the deep-rooted character, and the unwavering trust you will absolutely need for whatever beautiful, expansive plan He has prepared for you next. The pressure you feel right now, that anxiety swirling in your gut, that doubt whispering lies in your ear, that ache of unanswered longing, it is precisely this pressure that God is using to shape you. He is molding you into a person of greater spiritual resilience, someone more deeply rooted in His truth, someone whose faith is not just a fragile seedling, but a mighty oak. The very act of trusting Him when you can't see the path forward is building the spiritual muscle that will serve you for a lifetime of walking by faith, not by sight. When the weight feels overwhelming, when the silence seems deafening, try to shift your perspective. See it not merely as an obstacle blocking your way, but as a sacred opportunity for God to build something strong, enduring, and beautiful within you. This waiting season is not an empty pause. It is a holy preparation. It is the quiet, unseen work of God cultivating spiritual muscle for the journey ahead. Trust the process. Even when it hurts, He is faithfully building you. You've been waiting, not just for a few days, but perhaps for months, maybe even years. You are waiting for the breakthrough you've prayed for until your voice grew hoarse. Waiting for the door to open after countless knocks. Waiting for the healing, the reconciliation, the financial relief, the answer that feels like it holds the key to everything. And while you wait, life feels paused, like you're standing in a dusty hallway, unable to step into the grand rooms of joy or purpose until the specific longed-for event finally arrives. It's easy to believe the lie that true living, true happiness, true service can only begin after the waiting is over. But God's truth whispers something different into the quiet spaces of your heart. He says the meanwhile isn't a holding pattern, it's hallowed ground. The waiting room isn't empty space, it's a training field. This season, often felt as barren as a wilderness, is precisely where faithfulness can bloom most vibrantly. The ancient wisdom found in Colossians 3:17 doesn't have an asterisk next to it, exempting the difficult seasons. It says, "And whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through Him." This isn't just a command for the mountaintop moments. It's a call for the valley, for the storm-tossed boat, and yes, for the long, silent vigil of the meanwhile. It means even the waiting itself can be done in His name. The spiritual insight pierces through the gloom. Your faithfulness in the waiting is as profoundly significant to God as your faithfulness in the moment of victory. He isn't just interested in your destination. He's intimately invested in your journey, in who you are becoming while the story unfolds. The daily choices you make right now, the kindness you show when you feel weary, the prayer you offer when doubt bites, the small task you complete with excellence, these aren't fillers. They are building blocks in the divine architecture of your soul. God sees your obedience not just in the grand gestures of breakthrough, but in the quiet, consistent rhythm of living for Him today, right where you are. The call is clear, though it asks for surrender. Don't put your life on pause. Don't let the uncertainty of tomorrow steal the reality of today. What can you do today? Invest in the relationships right in front of you. Serve someone nearby, even in a small way. Deepen your walk with Him, not just for the answer, but in the journey. Live faithfully, live fully in this present, sacred meanwhile. You're standing in the thick of it now. The waiting has stretched into weeks, then months, perhaps even years. The light you prayed for hasn't broken through. The answer you begged for feels further away than ever. It's not just the delay that gnaws at you. It's the profound confusion, the sense that God's plan, if there even is one for this season, makes no earthly sense. Why this detour? Why this pain? Why this prolonged silence when your heart is screaming? This is where the darkness begins to whisper, and its favorite target is God's character. The doubt doesn't just question His timing, it attacks His very nature. Is He truly good? The thought slithers in. If He loved me, wouldn't He have done something by now? Wouldn't He have spared me this? This valley you're walking through feels less like a path of purpose and more like a place of forgotten hope. The promises you once clung to feel brittle in your hands, like dried leaves ready to crumble. The vibrant faith that carried you through easier seasons seems to fade into a faint, flickering ember. You feel the weight of unanswered questions press down, a heavy, suffocating blanket. The narrative you've built about God's swift deliverance feels dismantled by the reality of your lingering struggle. It's in this raw, vulnerable space that Psalm 23 arrives, not as a magic wand to erase the valley, but as a flashlight beam cutting through the shadow, revealing not an exit, but a companion. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, the psalmist declares, not around the valley or out of the valley quickly, but through it. And the comfort isn't the valley's disappearance, but the shepherd's presence. I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. The profound spiritual insight here is revolutionary, especially when you feel abandoned or forgotten by God. Trusting God's goodness is not a fair-weather faith, reserved for mountain peaks and sunlit pastures. It is a faith forged in the crucible of the waiting, crucial precisely because you are in the valley. His goodness isn't measured by the speed of your relief or the instant gratification of your prayers. It is measured by His unchanging character. He is good. He is love. These aren't conditional statements based on your current comfort level. They are declarations of His eternal being. His presence with you in the valley is the ultimate proof of His goodness. He doesn't stand at the edge, waiting for you to figure it out. He descends into the shadow, walking step for step beside you. His rod isn't just for protection from external threats. It's sometimes the gentle correction or guidance within the trial. His staff isn't just for rescue. It's the steady support you lean on when your strength gives out. It's a gentle, poetic paradox, finding solace not in the absence of the storm, but in the quiet assurance that the master of the storm is in the boat with you. Finding strength not in knowing the outcome, but in knowing the one who holds the outcome. His faithfulness is a bedrock, unwavering and true, even when your own faith feels as unstable as shifting sand. You may feel faithless in the face of this trial, but he remains faithful. He cannot deny himself, and his nature is goodness and love. So the quiet call to faith emerges from the heart of this dark place. In the midst of your confusing, painful wait, can you intentionally choose to affirm his goodness? This isn't about pretending the pain isn't real or spiritualizing away your very valid struggle. It is about looking the doubt square in the face and declaring, even here, even now, he is good. It means speaking his promises not just over the outcome you desire, but over his character. You are faithful, Lord. You are my shepherd, I shall not want. You work all things for good for those who love you. Remind yourself of who he is, not based on your current circumstances, but based on the testimony of his word and his history with you. Trust his heart, the loving, sovereign core of his being, even when you cannot possibly understand his hand in the circumstances currently shaping your life. This is the deeper walk of faith, learning to rest in his unwavering goodness, trusting that the shepherd who walks with you through the shadow is indeed leading you towards green pastures, in his time and in his way. You sit in the quiet, the echoes of the conversation on waiting settling around you. Feel the weight of it, not as a stone in your gut, but perhaps like the grounding peace of a quiet understanding finally taking root. You look at the calendar, the unanswered prayers, the doors that remain closed, and the easy narrative whispers, you are lost in the wait. You are forgotten here. But the truth, a deeper, more resonant truth, breathes softly through the stillness. You are not lost. You are held. You are not forgotten. You are known, seen, cherished, deeply and intimately, by the one whose hands spun the galaxies into being, and whose gaze falls gently upon the smallest sparrow. Your waiting season, with all its sharp questions, its vast quietness, its persistent ache, it is not a detour sign pointing you off God's intended path. No, it is an integral, sacred part of your story, woven into the grand, beautiful tapestry of his story being written in and through you. Think of God's timing. It doesn't operate on clock seconds or calendar days. It operates on perfect knowledge and perfect love. He sees the beginning before the first stone was laid, and he sees the end before the final breath is drawn. He knows what you need, precisely when you need it, and he understands, with an unclarity you cannot yet grasp, how the unfolding moments of your life fit into his vast, intricate design. The waiting is not empty space. It is fertile ground. It is doing work within you that immediate answers, swift rescues, instantaneous clarity never could accomplish. It is forging a deeper intimacy with the heart of your Father, honing resilience you didn't know you possessed, cultivating a patience that feels like grafting a sturdy oak branch onto a tender vine, and revealing the unwavering depth of his faithfulness in ways that can only be learned in the quiet, stretched out, sometimes painful moments between here and there. Remember the ancient ones whose stories light the way. Abraham standing on the edge of a promise for decades. Moses wandering the wilderness for 40 years before stepping into leadership. Joseph languishing in a pit and a prison before ruling a nation. The disciples hiding in fear after the cross, waiting for the promised Spirit. Their waits were not delays. They were divine preparations, essential chapters in their miraculous stories. So is yours. Your identity is not defined by the circumstances surrounding your waiting, by the lack you perceive or the silence you hear. Your identity is anchored, unshakably, in your belovedness as a child of God, held securely in His hands, walking a path specifically designed for your growth, your refinement, and ultimately His radiant glory. Even in the deepest, most echoing silence, His presence is not absent. He is not merely waiting at the destination you long for. He is faithfully, intimately with you on the journey itself. He is closer than your next breath. Closer than the anxiety that sometimes grips your chest. Closer than the doubt that whispers in the quiet hours. He is weaving strength into the very fabric of your soul with every passing day you choose, deliberately, to place your trust in Him. The wait is an invitation, often a demanding one, to lean closer than ever before, to listen deeper than you thought possible, to discover the unshakable peace that transcends understanding. The peace of knowing, truly knowing, that you are precisely where God intends you to be, being prepared precisely for exactly what He has prepared for you. You are not waiting for God to start working. He is working right now. In the stillness that surrounds you, in the quiet struggle within you, in the sacred holy space of your wait, release the desperate need to understand every twist and turn, to map out the unknown path ahead. Surrender to the ancient, trustworthy rhythm of His grace. Trust the perfect, loving wisdom of His timing. You are held. You are loved. You are being made ready, refined like precious metal in the fire. Even and especially in the silence, His presence sings over you, a lullaby of sovereign love and unfailing faithfulness. They didn't see the end of the story they were living, the wilderness, the prison, the upper room wait, but they trusted the author. And that was enough.